Hey, what's up? And welcome everyone. This is a brief stream. Haven't done one in a long time. Just put up a video a couple days ago about arguments in favor of continuing legends, something that is still surprisingly controversial among many EU fans. Used to be controversial among new canon shills, controversial among EU fans. But I thought since I had a couple of minutes here, and since I am primarily more interested in EU content and EU promotional materials rather than just sort of like waxing argumentative about continuing legends and talking about the fandom, I thought I would spend a couple of minutes actually showing off some promos and some EU obscure things here that happen to be currently here at my desk. I'm constantly in the process of sort of cycling through all of this stuff, as I've said on many previous streams and videos and stuff. For anyone who's seen these, most of my EU collection is offsite in several different storage units for a variety of reasons. One day I would love to have it once again all behind me, but up on shelves surrounding me. Right. In the meantime, I just keep going through this stuff. I want to sort of like revisit it. In some cases, I want to sort of organize it. My promo collection in particular, it's been a very, very, very long process of getting all the posters together. And there's still many, many more to come that need to get filed away and stuff like that. But all of the tiny little promos to it, like here's one, for example, right? So this is a sticker. This is an official promo sticker for Jedi Outcast. It's about 4x6, maybe 4x6 inches. It's just a sticker. I'm obviously never going to use it as a sticker, but there it is. What do you do with this, right? Except just keep it in a shoebox, you know? And I have several dozen shoebox size things for Star Wars official promos like this. So a couple things. Here's another thing like that. I'm so mad. I had to get a replacement. This is basically a postcard size promo for Knight Errant that was given away at Celebration 5 in 2010 at the Del Rey booth. And there was like a gimmick involved at the time with it. You had to like go and do some hashtags on Twitter, whatever the social media platforms that were popular at the time were. But they gave this away along with a preview copy, a sort of a special exclusive preview copy that was just available there for the comic. I have mine somewhere, but I lost it. But I got excited about it again because, and I wonder if I have it, the recent Epic collection, it's somewhere around here. I can't find it. But the recent Epic collection that includes mostly the Knight Errant stuff from John Jackson Miller did something really clever. They actually included they included a page on that thing, on that promo. And as a promo geek, I was super, super happy about that. So it kind of got me excited about it again. And I've been so frustrated that I can't find mine. I know I have it somewhere. I just went and bought another one. So that's it right there. But it just goes to show there's just weird size things like this, right? What do you do with this? You know, you don't frame them or whatever. You just keep them in a shoebox, which is one reason why they're easy to get lost. A long time ago, I did a video about some Wizards of the Coast role-playing game in-store promo materials. And I think I covered some sell sheets and a fold-out brochure that basically advertised for retailers the promo kit you could buy. And I talked about all the various things. I think I showed the various things that were advertised in this brochure, right? It was like replicas of the game boxes and posters and stored and counter displays and stuff like that. This is the packet. This is the packet that you would send away for as a retailer that I talked about in that video. I always meant to do a follow-up video about that. Here it is. And it's just great stuff inside. You can kind of get a sense here. See, there's Star Wars role-playing game, Control Your Destiny. That was part of the branding at the time. There's such cool stuff in here. Again, everything I just described, the counter displays and stickers and window clings and everything like that. The coolest thing is a gigantic poster that I will put in a frame for everyone to see in a future video. But here it is. This is something I promised to show off way back in the day. What's up, Marcel? Mandorla reveal stream. Absolutely. I'm going to finally reveal Mandorla, the entire Nightfall trilogy, Legacy of Doom, the Lost Margaret Weiss follow-up to Heart of the Jedi, of course, Escape from Dagu, in all of its variations, right? The hardcover, the Science Fiction Book Club edition, the mass market paperback, the UK editions, the Russian editions, right? Yeah, the audio books. Why are source books so expensive? I presume, hey, what's up, Maxwell? I presume you mean like the older role-playing game source books. I think it's a good question. I've wondered that too sometimes because some of them are insanely expensive. I'd always like to think it's because people still have them, right? So they're just scarce because people are still holding on to these treasures. I think in the case of Wizards of the Coast, where sort of like the latter wave is uniquely expensive, right? I think it's just because I presume sort of a lower print run. I mean, you tend to find this with lots of things, book runs, comic runs in particular. The last couple of issues or the last issue or the last couple of things that get produced in a run are always going to be harder to find, more expensive, because by that point the line is dwindling, right? And there's just fear out there. That's my speculation. I don't have any other insight into it beyond that. What's up, Arthur? My good friend Arthur, who always sends me great insights that he's found, cool little collectibles, cool things like that, cool customs. I've always appreciated those messages. Rocking the Gatus haircut. I haven't gotten my haircut since last summer, and it's actually not as long as I thought it would be, but I hate getting my haircut. I can't remember if I talked about this before. I know a lot of people on this probably know this and have seen photos, but for years, like in high school, I had hair down half my back, and because that's just the way you did it where I grew up. Southern California, in the heavy metal, hair metal era, that was just the way to go. I had absolutely wonderfully, beautifully long hair, and had to get it cut when I was like 17 or something like that. I think probably for like senior photos or whatever, and vowed to never have short hair after that. And every once in a while, you go back, see some older videos. I've got some pretty short hair, sometimes for professional reasons. I wanted to sort of clean myself up. Never happy to have to do so, but I always like to keep it looking long and wild, right? That's my thing. So good to see you. So more stuff. So this is cool. I haven't showed this off yet. I'll open it up in a future video. I want to do videos about all this stuff, right? All of my promo materials, all of my posters. There are literally hundreds of things to do videos on. So once I get a little bit more time again, I'll be picking back up with all those videos. I am currently a father of 5 kids, ages 5 and under. So as you all can imagine, it's not just that time is scarce. It's not just that like I'm busy, right? That's superficially true. The real reason why it's so tough is that with that many kids at that age, you can't plan, right? Like I feel so bad. Quinlan Voss, great channel everyone should subscribe to if they haven't, did a live stream the other night. And I told them, I said, if I can make it, I will be there. But the thing is, I really am in no position right now at this stage of my life to commit to anything, right? It's just not possible. It's just not possible to commit. In any event, this is cool. So this is from Japan, basically a retailer licensee brochure about Star Wars on the back. May the Force be with you. But it's specifically for the Japanese retail market. And here's this familiar branding that you've seen on a number of previous videos of mine. So Star Wars taking the galaxy by force. This was very popular branding. Mid-90s, you've seen a number of videos of mine where I talk about this in the context of everything from bookmarks and advertisements to T-shirts and stuff like that. You saw it everywhere for just a couple of years. Even places like this. This is previews. So this is Diamond Comics, sort of I think the main comic distributor, at least in North America. This is their catalog. These are really fun things to collect, by the way. Just a quick aside, because over the course of their run, and they're still going, they've been doing it since the 90s. These are the catalogs that retailers get, that comic shops get, to actually make the orders, right, for their customers. But over the years, there's been order magnitude a dozen or so that have had Star Wars comic related covers, and so those become very cool collectibles. On a previous video, I highlighted, it gets kind of meta, I highlighted some posters that used to hang in comic shops that promoted the catalog, right? Which then promote the Star Wars comics, right? So all of that stuff, in my opinion, becomes very collectible for anyone interested in EU promos and EU comics, right? So very meta, right? I've got the promo posters promoting the promotional catalogs that promote the EU. But what's cool is when there are these occasional Star Wars covers of these, the posters basically replicate the cover art, right? So they're really neat things to see. What I didn't show off in that video are some of the related catalogs. And so just in no particular order here, this is one that was advertising that weird, I think 2013-ish sort of Infinities, like, that comic, that the Dark Horse comic, like supposedly based on sort of early versions of, George Lucas drafts for what the Star Wars would be. There's another one from the same era advertising the weird Brian Wood run. I don't have the other ones at my fingertips, but off top of my head, well, actually, you know what? I'm going to pull up something real quick and run through what I believe to be the comprehensive list of all of those previews to find. Then I'll get back to the reason I mentioned this in the first place. It relates to the Taking the Galaxy by Force branding. But there was a previews catalog that highlighted the Dave Dorman art for the Dark Horse comic series. It basically was like a new comic adaptation of A New Hope. There's one from November 1998 that the cover highlights the Boba Fett Enemy of the Empire series. There's one from March 1999 that highlights the Dark Horse Episode 1 comic adaptation. There's one from November 1999 that promotes the Chewbacca comic miniseries. There's one from February 2001 that highlights the Jedi vs. Sith miniseries. There's one from February 2005 that highlights the Revenge of the Sith Dark Horse comic adaptation. August 2006 that highlights Dark Times, which is poster behind me, 2x3 poster behind me. There's one from, this is not entirely EU related, but it's Star Wars related, from November 2008. Basically, the cover is highlighting, at the time, contemporary Star Wars action figures. There's one from August 2010 promoting the Knight Errant comic. Speaking of Knight Errant, mentioned that a few minutes ago. And then, of course, the Star Wars one I just mentioned, like, quote unquote, the Star Wars from July 2013. There's February 2002, the comic adaptation of Attack of the Clones. Just a few more left. April 1996, one of the covers is promoting the Bounty Hunter pop-up comic. November 12th is the Brian Wood one I just showed off. And then there's two more. There's July 2000, which shows off that first Dark Horse Darth Maul comic miniseries. And then finally this from January 1995. Now, of course, this is Superman. And importantly, if you're collecting these things, they get tricky to identify on eBay because they're double-sided. So someone might think that only Superman's important and only highlight this and not let you know that, for instance, Gen 13 is being promoted on the back, right? And that's the case with all the ones I just mentioned. In some cases, the Star Wars stuff's on the back. In other cases, it's on the front, but they're both basically cover, right? It just depends whether it's front or back. Here's the branding that I'm talking about. Taking the Galaxy by Force. And in this case, what was really neat was this was the special Star Wars Bazaar issue where you'll find a fabulous selection, it says, of Star Wars merchandise in their very first special preview section. What's really cool about these, they're neat collectibles if you're into comics, regardless of Star Wars, because it's a neat time capsule. You go back. I mean, really, really helpful catalog for retailers and consumers alike. One of the ones that's not on the list that's really cool too is the one I have from the end of 2014 that has a special section all about how Dark Horse is, being given the boot as the licensee and all about how, buckle up because they're about to unload. If folks are around and remember, Dark Horse did an amazing thing and basically offered up their entire backlist at, cutthroat prices, right? Basically, look, they were losing the license and it was a liquidation sale. It was an amazing time. So yeah, those are really cool. But that whole Taking the Galaxy by Force branding you see in so many places, and that Japanese retail licensee promo that we'll do a video on in the future is another place, and even these obscure places like the previews Diamond comic catalog. Got some questions here. Let me dive into this. Greetings from Melbourne Airport. Oh, wow. Have a safe flight if you're taking off. Have I ever had dreams about EU stories, posters, promotional materials that didn't exist? Oh, man, great question. I need to think about that. I'll slightly skirt the question by saying that I'm in the process of creating one that doesn't exist. So I, in some sense, have a vision, a dream. I haven't had a dream about one. I have my own dream, right? That I'm in the process of making, and I'm making a promotional poster that would look like an in-store promotional poster for Joe Bongiorno's Supernatural Encounters. So that's something I'm in the process of putting together. Yeah, that's right. There's a Japanese novelization of Battle of Endor. Yeah, with original scene that describes family spacecraft. So yeah, um, there is a Japanese version. Um, it is not super difficult to find in my experience still. I have it somewhere. Um, there are really weird translations of it. I think God, well, there's one kind of bastardized sort of anglicized translation of it is like the Endor Ferry or something like that. So there's a lot of different ways. I can track down the ISNB for anyone who's interested, maybe in a future video or something, or I'll put a link to it down below. But I haven't gone through and translated it to that level. But yeah, it's out there. That's right. That's true. I hope someone can put together a smart translation of that. I think that would be a neat thing for folks to have. 3 away from 500, and it's only it's only taken me almost the entire history of YouTube to do it. This account goes back to March 2006, but interestingly, I didn't start posting Star Wars stuff until about 2015, maybe actually. And a lot of my early videos, you guys can't see anymore. I've taken them off. You know, everyone's first sort of videos on certain topics, particularly back in that era, aren't that good. I'm not to say my more recent videos are great, but yeah, but YouTube has not been my primary sort of how should I put this? It's not been the place I've spent the majority of my sort of like EU efforts, even though it's increasingly becoming the place where I'd like to spend the most time and to make the most contributions. But yeah, I think it might become a bigger place for me to sort of share this stuff off. So thank you, Dylan, for that. It'll be fun if I ever do get to 500 one of these years to do something special. Yeah, the pop-up comic is fun. It's certainly novel, right? I'm very excited too. The first couple of chapters, I guess you could call them, are sort of out there floating in the ether of the final edition. And Supernatural Encounters is one of those things that, at least this final edition, that I really want to study. This is something that I'm going to want to savor. So I've only read the first part, and it is just brilliant. So I cannot wait for the rest of it. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I sort of do. And believe it or not, there was something called, but I forget what it is. It was something like the George Lucas Spectacular or something. There actually was a Lucasfilm centric showcase, sort of on the road show. In addition, by the way, too, there was actually Endor on ice, so Ewoks on ice. So they took at least the part of Star Wars that's Ewoks and made like an ice capades out of it. And you can still find a lot of cool memorabilia from that. I don't know if there's really any lore that emerged out of that, but there's another thing called, and I forget what it is. It's like something like the George Lucas Super Star Wars Special or something like that. And it's basically Lucasfilm centric, right? So it's Indiana Jones stuff and some other things as well. But so it was not Broadway, but he did sort of, there were some licensed sort of shows kind of like that, believe it or not, for those who aren't familiar. The Crystal Star on Ice. Crystal Star, by the way, is a topic that I want to do a specific video on in the future. Because I was talking with a couple of people recently. There's been this fascinating revisionism around Crystal Star, which I'm glad to see, not because I necessarily have a dog in the fight. I'm sort of on record as saying that Crystal Star is not as bad as everyone believes they're supposed to think it is. On the other hand, it's not great. My point's always been, it became the book that you just had to have that opinion about, to the point that people stopped reading it. I'm really glad to see people reading it again and making up their own minds. And I think the reactions are now, I think, a bit more sort of mixed, the way that you would expect them to be, rather than 110% negative, right? Because I think most people were just sort of like, they just thought that's what they were supposed to say about it. But in any event, in talking about this with a few people, I realized that I think without trying, I might have the most robust, complete collection of crystal star things of anyone, maybe outside of like Lucasfilm or Steve Sansweet, right, at Skywalker Ranch, like outside of any like museum of Star Wars content. And the reason I say that is I really cannot think of a version I don't have. Just to take North America, I've got the original hardcover. I've got the um, original sci-fi book club edition hardback. I've got the original paperback. I've got the Legends Banner edition, but I've also got the infamous, and if you're not familiar with this, go search my videos and go check this out. I've got the infamous Legends Banner edition error copy that has a non-Star Wars book inside. I probably uniquely among anyone in the Star Wars fandom also has the reverse. I have the incorrect book with Crystal Star inside. I also have all of the audio editions, both in North America and the UK. I also have foreign editions, including really cool ones like from Russia. By the way, Russian editions of Bantam era books is a whole nother video I'll do down the road as well. I also have all of the store displays, both for the hardcover and paperback editions. I have things I've done other videos about, like the Antioch journals that have the Crystal Star covers and the Crystal Star bookmarks. I also, by the way, and I think this is the cherry on top, not just the error editions, I also have a printer's proof of the Crystal Star cover, signed by Vonda McIntyre, from Vonda McIntyre's actual personal collection. So I mean, I think I've got it all. So I want to do a video where I sort of go through all of that fun stuff. I think the holiday special probably scarred George. I think that's exactly right, from doing anything too out of the ordinary. So Dark Horse adapted Thrawn. They adapted a couple of things, right? Like they did some new adaptations of the movies. They also did adaptations of like Splinter of the Mind's Eye and a couple things like that. What other EU books would I've liked to see adapted? It's a good question. Let me think about that. I think maybe it's kind of an uninteresting answer, but I sort of wish that I'm pausing because this is what happens when you get this little sleep with 5 kids. Why in the hell can I not think of the name of the New Jedi Order? I wish that New Jedi Order had more either comic adaptations or comic related titles that didn't come so much later in the way that they did with Invasion. I wish basically we got more NJO comics. That's my answer. Cool. Good. Yeah, I think I don't know why I think this, but I think that Joe put together a reading list of things to get caught up on before diving into Supernatural Encounters, and I think Crystal Star was on it. If not, the reason I might be associating them is because, and I don't know if I've said this before, but on Amazon right now, on one of the editions of Crystal Star, it might just be like the early paperback edition, because there's a couple of different listings for it. There's an old review by Joe Bongiorno of the Crystal Star, and it is this amazing, eloquent review that I feel like everyone needs to read. And I brought it up to him a couple of years ago, and he'd actually forgotten he'd written it, but it's still there. You can find it. Yeah, I would even buy the Essential Legends collection, and which is not something that I have really done up till now, with the exception of only one. I only have one of the Essential Legends collection because I don't need them, right? I've already got them. The only reason I have one of them, it's Kenobi, and I did a video about it a couple of months ago. I bought it because it was signed by John Jackson Miller, who put in a promo bookmark. So I had to buy it for the promo. And I came close to selling the book back, but I haven't done that yet. So, but I would definitely buy it for Crystal Star. At this point, I have to keep up that run. John Byrne, that's a great idea. Yeah, that would be cool. Interesting. Rob Liefeld. I hadn't thought about that in the context of Star Wars. Um, Speaking of comics, this is something I think I posted a photo on the community tab. This is actually a recent acquisition. Um, I've been trying to get this for a very, very, very long time. As most people know who have seen my channel for a while, I'm a total nut about posters. I, I I'm a completist, right? So I've got everything content wise, with the exception of one thing that I sold a couple weeks ago. I sold my copy of Imprint, Christie Golden's Imprint, the very short, like 7, 8 page fan club, um, basically pamphlet that's like whatever. It's super easy to find digitally, and I wanted the money, so whatever. So technically, I don't have a complete collection anymore, but for all intents and purposes, I do. But for years, I've been trying to, you know, determine whether I have a complete promo collection. I'd like to have every notable promo, in-store display promo or retailer promo, what have you, um, for anything EU, games, comics, books, what have you. Um, what that primarily means is posters, right? I mean, with the major exception of like store displays, like the cardboard bookstore displays that like the books are in, or things like that. But with the occasional sticker and button and things like that, you're primarily talking about posters of varying sizes. In some cases, very small. In other cases, very very big, like this, right? In some cases, much much bigger than that. Like I think I did a video about like the Clone Wars movie. I've got like an 8 foot long poster for that, things like that. I'm at the point where I sort of feel like I think I've got all of like the little non-postery kind of things, the little tchotchkes, again, the buttons, the pins, the keychains, things like that. I think I'm at a point now where what I really want to lean into, if I was to sort of like shed any part of my collection, I'd want to sort of basically refine it to the point of being able to maintain that I have every poster related promo ever, right, related to the Star Wars expanded universe. Um, this is essential part of that. This is a German edition of the Aura Singh Star Wars Bounty Hunter one shot. It's called in Germany. It was the Star Wars Special #7 by I think the Dino. That's the German licensee, or was the German licensee. And you can see here it's basically the same cover as the Aura Singh Bounty Hunter edition, except this thing here says extra Aura Singh poster, and inside is a removable poster of this cover, right, which makes it sort of a not a promo poster per se. This gets a little persnickety. There's a technical difference between a promo and a premium. So that would technically be a premium poster because it's something that came along with the purchase, but whatever. Basically what I'm looking for is to maintain a complete collection of anything official with an EU image on it, right? And that would definitely fall under that. A couple of questions here. Let's see. The thing that I mentioned that was signed by John Jackson Miller was his Essential Legends Collection edition of Kenobi. Let's see. How many posters do I have on my walls compared to what you have in storage? I have 0 posters on the wall. What you see behind me is literally just sort of stacked up on top of a couple of boxes, just leaning up against the wall. I have 0 posters on the wall. Everything is either in storage, or in the case of an increasing number of my posters, they are bagged and boarded, not unlike comic books. Like you can go, like there's a great website, Bags Unlimited, that sells like archival proof backing boards, like acid-free backing boards, and bags for varying sizes of like 2x3, 27x41, even bigger poster sizes and stuff like that. And I have those, and I did a video about this, like I think last summer. I talked about how I sort of store them. So I have a growing number of my posters here in my house in a very sort of like accessible sort of way of, but still, unfortunately, most things are in storage. And a lot of most of my posters are still in tubes, or if they were like machine folded, like they're still sort of in their original shippers and stuff like that. So wall space is at such a premium that I don't know what I'll do about getting some of them up. We'll see. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I've thought a lot about this, just kind of for fun. Like, what would I do? Like if I could only put up a couple, I think it's really tough to say, right? Because part of me would want to put up some of the movie posters too. Interestingly, and I've said this before, like I'm not a huge movie promo collector guy. Like I isn't that weird? I prefer to collect the EU rather than the movie stuff for just a variety of reasons. That said, I do have the main variants of like posters of like all like the movies, right? You know, so I'd probably want to put up at least 6 posters, right? 6 of my favorite sort of variants, right, of the 6 original films. Probably would put up the 3 promo posters, the 3 main promo posters for the Tartakovsky Clone Wars. Would probably put up my 18 by 24 original promo poster for Heir to the Empire. Would probably also keep this one up here, not the Start Times one, but the Christmas one back here. Just because that was my remaining holy grail. You can see, by the way, what I'm talking about here. This is the Start Times poster, and it's in a top loader. It's in a flexible top loader, which is great because most of these posters are double-sided. So this is advertising. This is obviously one of the covers, and then on the back here, this is all of the Wheatley pencil art, right? So really kind of cool. But it's impossible to get posters in these things, but once they're in here, they're pretty secure. So top loaders work, but also these other ideas, like I mentioned, like the bags and boards and stuff like that. So anyway, let's see here. I'm getting behind on questions. Yeah, I mean, Kenobi's good. I'm kind of weird. I'm a little contrarian. I think I've said this before. I think Kenobi is kind of like, it's like the mirror of Crystal Star. For years, people used to think there used to be the politically correct take on Crystal Star. You were supposed to have to hate it. Kenobi is the book you're supposed to have to love. So the expectations are super high. I would just say adjust your expectations. I think it's top tier, but not the best, right? But I enjoyed it. I really like John Jackson Miller. Yep. Yeah, Russian Bantam novels. What's really neat, and I'll do this in a future video, is that the Truce at Bakura. Well, Quinlan Voss did a video about this. I would just go to his channel and check it out. But he shows them off, and they're pretty cool. They most of them borrow from the Truce at Bakura artwork of the big 3 characters there, with then other artwork below them. Fascinating stuff. When was the last time a big cardboard stand was used to promote an EU book? It's a great question. I've been trying to figure out whether anything has been done to promote in this way the Essential Legends collection. To the best of my knowledge, no. I even talked, maybe it was last weekend or the weekend before. I talked to Pete Vilmer, who is the head of Lucasfilm fan relations, about this, because he's a huge poster collector and a huge sort of advertisement and store display collector of Star Wars, obviously. And really nice guy, great conversation. Stumped him on a couple of things, actually, that I asked him about, if he had any sort of insight into aspects of them. And he goes, I didn't know that existed, right? But one thing in particular, real quick aside, is there's a very elusive promo poster for Cloak of Deception. Most people don't know it exists, including a friend of mine who I've talked about in other streams, who actually was working with James Luceno, who wrote Cloak of Deception, on a EU reference book that got canceled, unfortunately, after the Disney acquisition. So even he wasn't aware of it, given his Luceno connections. But there is indeed a promo poster for Cloak of Deception that's basically reproduces the cover art of that book. That was basically, it was like a tearaway poster on a cardboard display for that book at bookstores. Very, very, very hard to find, both the display and the poster. Whereas Truce at Bakura, which was one of the other few places in which this was done throughout the EU, it was also done in the context of Jedi Quest and the Boba Fett sort of kids book series. But in the case of Truce at Bakura, I think every day, 20 different versions of that tearaway poster get posted on eBay or something like that, right? Very easy to find. But the last time it was done was probably, and I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm going to make a guess here, was probably, trying to think those last couple of years. Like, I don't think I remember seeing one for, like, say, you'd think there should be one for like Kenobi or Scoundrels or something like that. And I just don't think there is. Gosh, it's a really great question. I'm trying to think about that. I'm trying to work backwards here. Like, there's definitely some for, God, this is a great question. You kind of stumped me. I don't know. I need to do some research into that. I got it. Because the thing is, the really tricky thing is a couple of my gaps I have most of the store displays for most of the EU books, both in the Bantam era and in the Del Rey era, and for like Scholastic books and book fairs and things like that. But some of my biggest gaps are actually in the more recent Del Rey years. And I don't know why. And this is one of the things I was asking Pete about. Kind of relates to your question, because he was kind of like, he goes, yeah, unfortunately, just given the state of the book industry, retailers are just less interested in making that kind of space for this sort of stuff. Fewer people are buying books at stores. Promo displays, unfortunately, are just less relevant, which is really, really sad, right? So, God, I'm really trying to think about that. So the few that are out there, I mean, there were fewer being produced in the first place. God, I'm trying to think. I mean, there's a ton for New Jedi Order. There's a bunch for like the Clone Wars multimedia tie-in. After that, I really think it slows down. Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. It's weird. Nathan Butler is a great YouTube channel who had everything, was an EU contributor himself. He wrote one of the C Canon Tales comics about Kyle Katarn, or no, was it Kyle Katarn? I think so, right? Yeah, I forget. I'm tired, but he got rid of everything, absolutely rid of everything, and has now doubled down on just becoming like the world's greatest collector of home video releases for Star Wars items, including the Ewoks films and stuff, right? All the various releases and stuff like that. But I've been always fascinated by how he could have gotten rid of everything. And I gotta say something kind of crazy. Having built up my collection after all these years, having held on to everything, having sort of refined it, perfected it, trying to sort of, and then build on it with the promo stuff. Having sold one of these things a couple weeks ago, if you've just joined, like I sold my copy of Imprint, the Christie Golden Fate of the Jedi tie-in, like 7 pages, which again, just is widely available to read digitally if I ever want to reread it. Having done that, having kind of like broken the ice, I'm like, oh, okay, that felt okay. It wasn't the end of the world. And yeah, there's something. I am just such a collector first. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a massive, massive Star Wars fan. It's the number one hobby in my life. It's just that the mode I choose to sort of engage in the hobby is as a collector, right? I was just born a collector, an obsessive collector. And I'm not just obsessive about collecting Star Wars. I have every Star Trek book, and I have Star Trek in-store promos and cardboard cutouts too, and stuff like that, right? Same with Doctor Who. I got every Doctor Who book. I've got weird things, right? I've got every Smallville book and Smallville promo poster and Smallville RPG and stuff like that. I mean, I always go 100% in, right? And not even just on the basic content, but on everything, right? The ephemera, the advertising, the promo, and stuff like that. And it's kind of gotten to the point now where I've realized having a collection and a set of collections that big, that complete, it's taken on a life of its own in a way that almost makes it feel like I have a 6th child, right? Like my Star Wars collection, my Smallville collection, my X-Files collection. I mean, you name it, right? My comic books collections, right? Like complete runs of Superman, right? From like 1986 to 2018. It's like, it's like you feel like not just the physical weight when you have to like move this stuff around from time to time, but like the existential weight too. Having broken the ice with having gotten rid of one thing, it almost makes me feel like it wouldn't be the end of the world to get rid of my entire expanding universe collection, or at least pare it down back to just the main, what you might call just the mainline story, the adult novels, the comics, and a couple of relevant games and stuff like that here and there, which is why I think it would be a fun project. And Dylan and I have talked about this, like what is an essential collection for someone who just wants to understand the main beats of the Star Wars expanded universe. In any event, Steve, it's a great question. Obviously, more than you bargained for, but don't be surprised, folks, if one of these days I announce that it's all gone and that all that's left are my posters. Right? Again, having collected every bit of content, having enjoyed that, maybe this is the next endeavor. I don't know. Or maybe I'll just keep doing both. We'll see. Hey, what's up, Quillen? This is Quillen Voss I keep referring to. So everyone, please go subscribe to his channel. Go check it out. What Star Wars novels and comics do I consider to be as good, if not better, than the 6 movies? Great question. I consider the novelization of Revenge of the Sith to be better than Revenge of the Sith. For some, I remember when Red Letter Media started making their cynical critiques of the prequels, and one of the things they said early on in one of the videos was, don't tell us that it's better explained in the books. It's like, why can't we say that? It is, right? And they really elevate the stories. Revenge of the Sith, the novelization, is maybe, in my opinion, the best Star Wars work of expanded universe. And it is better than the movie. I think other things, Plagueis. I think, Revenge of the Sith. I mean, it has to be said is better than the movies. How difficult is to find promo posters for the novelizations, not just the movies, but for stuff like TCW, The Force Unleashed? Yeah, it's a good question. So there's a couple parts to that. When I think of novelizations, when I think of the original novelizations, like A New Hope and things like that, it gets trickier, particularly when you're talking about non-North American promos. So one of the main licensees at the time, Sphere or Sphere SF or Sphere Science Fiction, I've talked about them in the context of a Young Readers edition of Splendor of the Mind's Eye that I picked up from Australia that's baffled me for years. And every time I meet an Australian, I try and ask them, do you know anything about this? Because it doesn't appear to be any different than the regular novelization, yet it's tagged as Young Readers Edition, which usually means it includes either different content or new pictures, but it doesn't have any of that. So I don't know what the deal is. In any event, Sphere SF has some really, really cool promo posters that I'm still having difficulty tracking down. I know they exist. I know what they look like. I know people who have them, but those are tough to find. They're just so old, I mentioned this, I think, on a previous stream, but I have a line on what I believe to be the first Star Wars Expanded Universe promo item ever. And it relates to a novelization. It relates to the 1976 novelization of A New Hope. So I have someone, a reputable book dealer, who claims to have a t-shirt given to them by Del Rey Ballantyne, right, the publisher of the novelization, to promote the novelization. And I'm very close to getting it. I just need a little bit more due diligence, and I need a little bit more from them about the provenance, right? But that would be not just a cool promo related to the novelization, but might be the first, right? The original promo item. Anyway, your questions about promo posters. So some of the early years, I think the New Hope stuff is really tricky. But it gets easier from there. Like I've got promo posters specifically for retailers, like not just promo posters that like, a fan would put up on his wall that just has like the cover art or something, but like promo posters that a retailer would use to promote to customers for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And those are neat too, because sometimes they kind of come in the form of sell sheets. They sort of explain everything that a retailer could use to then promote. And they're like, they unfold and you can frame them. Really, really kind of neat things, really big posters. It just gets easier from there, right? But in the case of like the prequel, I'm trying to think. at least as it concerns comics, there's like Dark Horse has at least a promo poster for every one of their prequel comic adaptations, which is really cool. But TCW, very easy, super easy. Force Unleashed, easy, but with the caveat that somewhat like the Clone Wars. And there's so much stuff. The real challenge in promo collecting, if you want to move beyond just the books and the comics, if you want to sort of bring in video games and stuff like that, forget RPGs, which by the way, I'll highlight in just a second. But the video games around 2008 become so tricky, so complicated because there's so much. The Force Unleashed has so much out there because you're not just looking at, say, the developers' promo posters, and you're not just looking at, say, Del Rey's promos for the book adaptation or the Dark Horse adaptations. You're looking at every video game store and video rental store at the time that had cross-branded promos for the game, right? So you have to start looking for like the Blockbuster video posters for Force Unleashed, and not just the promo posters of various sizes, and not just the promo stands and things like that, but like window clings and stuff like that. Like I've got this crazy thing. I've got this massive, like 8-foot tall Blockbuster window cling for the Force Unleashed 2. I mean, just weird stuff. So you got to look at Blockbuster, you got to look at GameStop, you've got to look at FYE, I mean, whatever. I mean, any store at the time that could possibly have sort of had any tie in here. And then that's just North America, right? You know, what people often forget when you're looking at promo posters for video games is you gotta look overseas. I wish I had it framed right now, but for instance, I've got this really, really killer Republic Commando poster. It's 27 by 41 inches. It's basically just like the cover art from Republic Commando, the game. But at the bottom, it says game, right? And someone from North America might be like, that's very redundant. I guess I know it's a game, but Game is a UK video game store, right? So it's a game store. It's the UK's video game store called Games promo poster of Republic Commando. And then Australia, I've done some stuff advertising like Australian promo posters. So it gets super tricky, super tricky because there's just so much out there. And that's to say nothing of the Old Republic, right? Forget about it. Like I just, look, I want to maintain that over time I'll be able to get like the complete collection of promo materials related to everything. But when it comes to the games, I have to carve out a niche for an asterisk for the Old Republic. I'm doing okay by myself, but there's going to be some like cardboard stands and stuff like that realistically I'm just never going to be able to track down or afford. Posters I'll get pretty close. One fun thing though, for anyone out there who's interested in tracking this stuff down, a cool thing to think about, and God, it's another thing I got right here too, shoot, for Force Unleashed, but it's not framed, is something to look for is just when you think, you know, yep, that's a premium poster giveaway, that's a poster, that's a promo, that's a this or that, it's the Blockbusters, this. A lot of these places, they made specific posters just for the launch events of these things, right? So I've got some really cool posters that basically were like promoting like one event, like, hey, it's like at midnight, come and play the Force Unleashed for the first time, right? So, and like 2-foot by 3-foot promo posters for things like that, right? Very specific to like very specific stores and stuff. So it's really, really neat. So speaking of promo posters for games, not just video games, but role-playing games, I highlighted earlier on the Wizards of the Coast like promo retailer kit that I had that has a poster inside. This right here is also a bit of a grail. This is the original promo poster, in-store promo poster for West End Games, the Star Wars West End Games tie-in. Fulfill Your Destiny, adventure books and games, and advertise some of the first wave there. This is incredibly rare. This is basically only possible to find as like custom reproductions that are out there that aren't the same size. This is just definitely in my like top. I don't know if I would put a number on it, but it's in the top tier grails. That you just don't find that very often, to say the least. So that's pretty cool. So that's a very difficult thing to find. Anything from that era. West End Games is unique though. There's a lot of when I talk about like posters being the primary sort of promo item to collect, West End Games is weird. Like early on, there's lots of random little tchotchkes and stuff they gave away, promoting all sorts of elements of it, the adventure journals and things like that. But weird stuff. This is cool. This is I think I just mentioned the Dark Horse like promo posters of the adaptations of the prequels. This is one of them actually. It's 2 foot by 3 foot. This is for Attack of the Clones. And like most of these Dark Horse posters, the back advertises other Dark Horse comics you can pick up. The really neat thing about this is that it's signed by, interestingly, R.A. Salvatore on May 4th at Celebration. So that's pretty cool. Kind of adds an additional layer of, kind of uniqueness to it, right? So that's a fun one. I got some more questions here. Let's get caught up. Yeah, that's my favorite. And it's cool too, just to keep like pedantically sort of talking to folks about promos and stuff like that. What's really neat is that that's a song on there. It was also a single, and consequently also has, when I talk about promos, right, it's again easy to think about the tchotchkes, the pins, the buttons, the keychains, the posters and things like that, right? But obviously back there behind me is the ultimate promo. This is only the second one of these I think I've ever seen, and this is the only one that what's unique about this poster behind me, it's a 2 foot by 3 foot official promo poster for the Christmas in the Stars album by RSO Records. This is the only known version of the promo poster to have any recorded sale online, if that makes sense. So when you get into sort of like next level, sort of like collecting sort of communities and stuff like that, there's a lot of really cool websites like Worth Point and things like this that actually track all collectibles that are sold across the platforms, right? So that you can go back and figure out like comps and stuff like that, right? Like what actually exists, what did it sell for like 15 years ago, right? Like they're pretty serious stuff. Like you need to like sign up and pay subscription fees and stuff, but then it unlocks like a massive inventory of all sorts of fascinating content about these sorts of things. This is the only one that there's any recording of anywhere online of ever sort of transacting and crossing hands, right? So what's kind of neat about that is I'm in a very unique position to basically set the price for this, right? It's basically priceless in some ways, right? I'll never get rid of it. This is my grail. This is the most important to me personally. Sentimentally, this is the most important EU promo I own, but it's also maybe the rarest. So yeah, whatever that's worth. Oh, but anyway, going back to the album itself. When you think of promos, you think of things like posters and stuff like that. But the album itself has promo copies that were sent to whatever, record stores and radio stations and stuff like that. And the single too also has promo copies and stuff like that. By the way, talk about rare. There's some early cassette tape versions of that. Like you can still find the vinyl record pretty easily. The CD is out there. There's multiple editions of the CD. Some versions of the CD are rarer than others, but some of the cassettes, if they're still in the package, forget about it, man. If you have one of those, you're a billionaire. Let's see. I don't think they did. Yeah, Barnes and Noble have put together these really attractive collections. I think, what do they have at this point? There's I think there's a Bounty Hunters one. There's the Han Solo trilogy one. There's a few others. I don't think they've done anything to promote them beyond, maybe this is where you have to draw some interesting lines. Like I don't think there's any promo posters per se, but Barnes and Noble puts out, catalogs and things like that, right, for its customers where they might have maybe included images. And this is where you need to draw some really strict lines. I know some collectors who are really into the print advertisements. the advertisements you would find, say, in a magazine or in a catalog. I am not. I've always been much more interested in the unique standalone things that you don't just get in the course of getting your regular magazine or catalog or whatever, right? There's always exceptions, but so that's the only area in which I could think maybe you would find what you could technically qualify as like a promo image of one of these somewhere, but not standalone. I just don't think they exist. One away from 500. That's awesome. Wow. What do you know? What's up, Lance? Long time no chat. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Fate of the Jedi, I do not believe had any cardboard displays. I just don't remember any, right? I just don't remember them. But they had some really cool promos, though. There's no question about that. This is fun, by the way. This is not official, but this is just for like your computer. You know, this is just drawn from. This is just some fan made this. I think it's kind of cool. I'll probably stick it on my computer. But there is an absolutely kick-ass promo poster for Fate of the Jedi that I will show in a future video. It's double-sided. On the back is Death Troopers, the cover from Death Troopers. Now, the Death Troopers hardcover has effectively a poster inside it of the cover, but this poster is massive. I think it's like 20 inches by 30 inches or something. So it's Death Troopers on one side, and on the other side, it's homage of Fate of the Jedi. It's got basically a couple of different images from some of the covers, including like the one with Vestar and stuff like that. It's so cool. But I don't think there were cardboard displays, and I could be entirely wrong about that, right? But I don't think there were. But the posters, they weren't fooling around. There's some really, really cool stuff. What's up, Slav? Yeah, I think they did. So yeah, I think I remember seeing that. I don't have them. Wish I did. But I think they might. In fact, I think, you know what? Maybe I do have it. Let me check real quick. I have all this stuff cataloged like in Excel sheets and stuff like that. Let me check. I have this recollection. Yes, there is one. And it's what it is. That's right. Yep. It's the image of the Han Solo cover. You know, like there's the Solo cover, there's the Luke cover, and the Leia cover. Basically, it's a cardboard display, and the topper, it's the image of Han from obviously his edition, but then there's information about all three, right? So yeah, so it kind of came out a little bit later. I think it's just for the paperbacks. Well, obviously it's all paperback, but I basically, in other words, I think it came at the end of the wave of the trilogy. No, I don't. But I know you've got the T-shirt, right? I don't have that. No. You know, and speaking of Heir to the Empire, and speaking of Quinlan, you just did your video on the different editions, and where are mine here? I don't have the Heir to the Empire one in front of me here, but somewhere. Oh yeah. So yeah, here's these are the incredibly rare Legends Banner editions of the Heir to the Empire. Upstairs is actually my Heir to the Legends Banner editions of the Thrawn trilogy. Heir to the Empire with the 2014 edition with the Legends Banner is upstairs. These are incredibly rare because they didn't last long before they got the reprinted covers, I think around 2015. Again, Quinlan Voss did a whole video about it today. They're very rare. They're very hard to find. Anyone looking to find them, basically just go to eBay or places like that and just search for Heir to the Empire 2014. That's probably the best way to find it at this point. There is technically a version of the 3 books in the Thrawn trilogy that is probably rare. In 91, 92, 93, whatever, when that trilogy came out, there were Bantam put out these exclusive deluxe hardcovers. I think there's maybe only 1,000 editions of each, and you can still find them, and they're several $1,000s. But they're, so technically they're out there, right? So the one other thing when it comes to Heir to the Empire that is maybe more, well, probably is almost certainly more exclusive, just in terms of the sheer number of printed copies, are the like the book review copies, the uncorrected proofs, the advanced reader copies. I was talking with someone about this recently, and I forget who. Maybe it was, God, it was someone. And I just thought I had a couple here I wanted to show folks for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about when I refer to like these uncorrected proofs or whatever. Obviously, this is true across the publishing industry. When books are getting published, the publishers want people to read them for a variety of reasons, either because they want to get them hyped or they're potential book reviewers, or in some cases because they're friends and allies and they get to read them and look for little mistakes. It's just a way of externalizing some of the cost of like the intensive editing line work, right, and stuff like that that goes into producing books. And for Star Wars, right, there's just such a constant wave through the Bantam and Del Rey years, right? This played an important role in both promoting the books before they hit the market, but also in sort of like providing insiders an opportunity to help make some corrections to things. I don't have them all, but I have many. I have pretty much everything from the Bantam era. The Scholastic era is a little trickier. The Bantam era, though, is very tricky when it comes to the Empire, right? Like you can find Dark Force Rising, you can find Last Command, Heir to the Empire. I don't know anyone who has it. I'm sure they made one, right? But here's what they look like. Here's what we're talking about here. So this is Before the Storm. So this is the first edition or the first novel in the Black Fleet Crisis. And they kind of look like this, kind of like boring nondescript, like on the side. I don't know if you can see that, but the Star Wars logo, Before the Storm, author info. Nothing on the back, right? So it's the point isn't to sort of like have anything that could be sold as like a bootleg, pirate, counterfeit copy or anything like that, right? It's very, very clearly, described as basically an advanced review copy, or in this case, I think this is the uncorrected page proof editions, right? Some books had multiple editions, but you can just sort of see here, right? So Before the Storm, Star Wars. The sticker here says mass market publication date, the week of March 8th, 1996. It's got the ISNB date 599, 352 pages. These dates are interesting. Dylan and I were going back and forth about this because there's a lot of mystery about when some of these books were actually published. And it would be interesting to think that some of these dates might play some role in helping to sort of really nail down when in fact they actually came out. But this information here is just a shot in the dark, right? Again, these are things that came out before the books actually hit the market. So these might not actually always reflect the final edition. It says here, reviewers are reminded that changes may be made to this proof copy before books are printed. If any material in the book is to be quoted for a review, the quotation should be checked against the final bound book. Again, just more information here about Bantam Books and a reminder that is the uncorrected page proofs. Let's just distinguish this one. Again, a Bantam era book from the mid-90s with another Bantam era book from the mid-90s. This is an uncorrected proof for Crystal Star. It's blue, slightly different color blue, but different size. And go figure, right? Interestingly, Crystal Star has a number of different proof editions that you'll find out there with different colors. But same kind of thing, kind of nondescript, really on the back here. Information about the book, kind of like the synopsis like you'd find on the back of like the real edition. Star Wars, The Crystal Star, Vonda McIntyre. Star Wars, same thing, Crystal Star, Vonda McIntyre. Uncorrected proofs, November 15, 1994, indicating the hardcover publication date is coming November 15th. Bantam Spectra. So a lot of the Bantam era books look like this or look like this. They either have that sticker or something like this, and they're blue, they're red, they're white, they're gold. It just depends. They got a little bit of an upgrade in the Del Rey years, and I'll show you a Del Rey one here that I happen to have. Survivor's Quest. Okay. Timothy Zahn. Tentative, that's interesting, right? Tentative on sale date. They finally got smart and hedged their bets. February 3rd, 2004, tentative price $25.95. Good Lord, they really jumped up, right? Obviously, this is a hardcover. Contact information. Please note the books will not be available in stores until the above on sale date, right? Reminding people to hang tight with their reviews. You can see all throughout the Del Rey logo, right? It's kind of cool. But they pretty much look like this throughout most of the Del Rey run. And we're producing them all the way through up to the last couple of ones, so they're out there, if you're interested in collecting these things. These are things that were sent primarily to, again, either folks like in like the book review trade or bloggers or whatever, whoever they deem to be social media Star Wars influencers at the time. So cool stuff. But again, there's presumably an Heir to the Empire one out there. I don't have it, but Dark Force Rising and other ones, not impossible to find. God, what's left here? What do we have? Oh yeah, this is for Quinlan. This is, well, actually, let me get caught up real quick on a couple. Your collection will be sold off when I die. Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my collection. You know, if I don't sell off by the time I die, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I really, really don't know. It's a really good question. I guess I'll be gone, so it won't matter. Let's see. There's the answer. Let's do that. In the sarcophagus. That's right. In our EU pyramid. Yeah, that's a good answer. Sure. That makes sense to me. The most frustrating EU books for you. Huh. Scoundrels. Scoundrels by Timothy Zahn, because I've said this story before, so I don't want to bore anybody, but I remember viscerally the moment that I discovered that this book that sounded like a fun, interesting return to form for Zahn, that seemed like it was just going to be a great adventure and make, and just be a fun sort of that would make sense sort of in a certain context. When I found out when it was placed in the timeline, I thought that was sad. I thought it sucked. I was really, really mad about where they placed it. It was one of those many sort of just like continual sort of like latter year sort of EU drop of the balls, and sort of just like right in line with Zahn's sort of disregard too for sort of like ultimately how his sort of Z canon sort of seemed to fit in with the rest of the expanding universe. That kind of bummed me out. That was frustrating. There's other things about certain Star Wars books that frustrate me from a narrative point of view, but I just always come back to that visceral feeling I remember when I discovered when the book was set. No, you stumped me. I'll look into that. Thanks for the info. So I wonder if you can't see them, but right now I've got about, I don't know, half a dozen or so like comic long boxes or whatever that have nothing but RPG mags, non-Star Wars RPG mags that contain original EU content, right? Either in the form of like gameplay lore or contributions to lore, or new characters, new ships, new settings, new story scenarios. And I've made a couple of videos over the years about them. It's always been my goal to like go through and make a video about all of them, but life gets in the way. But inspired by Quinlan, what I think I'm going to do is just hopefully sooner than later, just do a quick video where I just like spread them out on the floor, just show everybody, right, the full extent to this, because what I want to primarily do at this point more than anything is just keep hammering home that just when you think you've sort of seen it all, when you've seen all the books, the comics, the games and stuff like that, don't forget the RPG mag content, right, in these non-Star Wars RPG mags, right? So that's another place to sort of go to explore the expanding universe. So yeah, it's a huge, when it comes to my two main sort of sub obsessions of Star Wars expanding universe collecting or whatever, it's the promos and it's also the RPG stuff, so what do I feel about the Tolkien fandom and them rallying around rejecting? I got a couple of mixed thoughts about this. I mean, on the one hand, I feel like I know exactly where they're coming from, in the sense that it's like they feel like someone has just sort of taken over this IP and has taken it in places that they don't feel sort of in any way relate to original source material, right? It feels like something of a reboot in the way that it feels like for many EU fans, like the post 2014 stuff just doesn't feel, I mean, it literally is a reboot, right? But it doesn't even have the feel of sort of the old Star Wars and stuff like that. On the other hand, there's a certain part of me that in my old age is softening a little bit in the following respect. I mean, I feel like, I don't know. I mean, Tolkien's not giving us any more new works, right? So it's like, if you're interested in anything Tolkien-esque, I guess that's one place to find it. Doesn't make it an official Tolkien story, right? And in the same way, and the only reason I say that is because I feel like there's going to come a point, not now, and not even really anytime soon, but down the road, when I think the EU obsession, and it's even weird. It's weird to hear me say this. It'll be weird for people to hear this, but I've said it before. But there's going to come a time when, um, particularly if we don't get anything new from Lucasfilm in the EU continuity, right? There's going to come a time when it's like our stance about only wanting to see stuff sort of grow in that continuity rather than checking out the other stuff is going to prevent us simply from just, enjoying a story for its own sake or something, which, by the way, ultimately is what the reboot did. And I've always said this. If I ever do see the new films or TV shows or whatever, right, they won't be Star Wars to me. I'm liberated now, actually, and get to enjoy them simply as sci-fi fantasy films or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, it's maybe not the best sort of comparison or whatever, but I will say this, though, that there is a danger in being a little too slavish, just to sort of like, no, this is just the Tolkien sort of, but in the way that with EU fans, we're so hardcore about what we identify as our E or not, that take those RPG mags that I love. There are some people who don't think that they are part of the expanded universe for a variety of just very technical IP reasons and things like that, right? That you have to battle. And I think ultimately, again, it's like at this point, this many years post 2014, my goal is to try and sort of expand the amount of possible things EU fans can sort of enjoy, right, and feel comfortable enjoying that as a part of their continuity, right? So I want to sort of enlarge it rather than shrink it. I don't know. I'm just sort of rambling, but ultimately, I do sympathize with them as a Tolkien fan myself, not a fanatic like the way that I'm sure some are. I saw the Amazon Rings of Power initially sort of very skeptically, right? Just didn't it. I don't know. I haven't seen it. Maybe I'll see it someday. I need to kind of warm to the idea. Do I have a single favorite issue of a Star Wars comic? Issue? Good question. I mean, my favorite Star Wars comic is Dark Empire, but if you mean favorite issue, last issue of the Tales of the Jedi, maybe? I don't know. Good question. Yeah, it's cool. I love it. Yeah, the adventure journals are just amazing. It's so cool. I'm never going to catch up with this, right? Let's see. How many more questions here? Let's see. Hey, it's Brian. Hey, son of Luke. What's up? What's up, Ryan? Hey, it's Matt. Look at that. This handsome face. This this incredibly tired, withered face at 11. Hey, that's cool. That's great. Good for him, man. Yeah. There's some great NJO promos, cardboard display promos. I've got some really, really cool like countertop displays for Vector Prime. Really, really love it. I've got it all. I mean, I got organized a long time ago, and when 2014 hit, that was the real impetus to really put it all together, right? So I've got everything. I've got my entire. I mean, this is true sort of beyond Star Wars too. I've got my entire book collection sort of cataloged, organized in various spreadsheets and tabs and folders and stuff like that. I've got the promos and stuff too. And I've even for years now, a decade or so, I've got a list, spreadsheet of even promos that I don't have or whatever because I've always had this long-term goal of potentially putting like a table, like a coffee table book together about the idea of Star Wars Expanded Universe promos. I just want to know. I've always just wanted to have at the minimum the complete list of everything out there. Because again, increasingly, I find myself wanting to sort of be like, if I did come across the occasional new keychain or something for like Vector Prime, I'd be like, you know what, I'll pass. I want the posters, So I forget, but don't you have one? Oh, no. You've got the Young Jedi Knights one, right? I think you scored that one. I think we talked about that. There's a couple different versions. You've got one of those. Junior Jedi Knights, that would be great. With a couple of these types of old series, I think where they don't exist, I kind of just want to make some custom ones, Let's see here. Oh yeah, they're really I'll show them off someday. There's a bunch of cool ones. There's also proofs editions for like the comics and things like that too. So there's a lot. They're not just for the novels. $10 you pass. That's too bad. That would be a cool one to have. Yeah, sorry to rub it in. Yeah, that would be cool. It's particularly neat because there's a lot of anecdotal sort of occasions in which some people have caught some boneheaded errors, right? That they've then had a chance to sort of update before they actually hit the market, which is really cool. Speaking of you, Quinlan, I was gonna say this earlier. We talked about this recently. These are the Tokyo Pop Silver and Black. They're comics. There's a couple there's like short stories in here. These are really cool. Again, this sort of file this under sort of like, are they strictly speaking C canon and continuity, or are they more like Tales, Infinities, or whatever? Again, at this point, this many years post 2014, who cares? They're a lot of fun. So these are Tokyo Pop. They're from Japan. And they're sort of just known as like Silver and Black, I think primarily based on the obies down here, right? So this is silver. This is black. Basically, like, look them up. Star Wars, manga, Tokyo Pop, Silver and Black. Quinlan, I think we might have talked about the Grievous story inside, which is really cool. So yeah, these are cool. So basically, down here basically says these came out in 2006. So what basically what this says is that Star Wars is over, because the movies at that point we thought were done, right? So basically Star Wars is over, but there's still more legends to tell, right? And that's what this does, right? So really, really cool stuff. I'm pretty sure you can still find these anywhere. I mean, at least in Japan. I've said this before. Amazon Japan is a great resource for North American collectors, or really collectors anywhere. It's not difficult to use. You just sign in. I mean, look, like I buy stuff from eBay France all the time. It's just the same. You just log in, create an account, or use your own credentials. Sometimes they'll sort of work one-to-one. Work with the dealers there to get rates to wherever you live. And the great thing about the Amazon Japan version, Amazon.jp, I think it is that there's a lot of cool, like, specific Star Wars Japanese stuff like this, but for whatever reason, there's also a lot of like non-Japanese Star Wars stuff that I found there. So like those really cool little German fan club mini books that Quality Autism has talked about, for anyone who knows what I'm referring to. If not, just Google that. Google Quality Autism German mini expanding universe. Trust me, you'll want to learn more about this. I found mine in Japan on Amazon. So go figure, right? So see how, yeah, the Delaware ones. Long before did that come out? I forget. I actually forget where I put it. What's interesting, by the way, about some of these is, so like what I was showing is like the uncorrected proofs, the advanced reader copies. There's another type of thing that you'll sometimes see, and they're just a review copy. They look exactly like they're basically the edition that's going to go on the shelf. It's just that they were, it's almost like Del Rey just scooped some up from the factory and sent some off with promotional materials inside to say, we want you to review this book. Here's a copy of the book, right? So it's different than getting like the ARC, the advanced reader's copy, or the uncorrected proof. It's literally just another version. So you'll sometimes see that. What distinguishes it usually is like the official information inside from Del Rey, or I think in some cases even Bantam did that too. So you'll find that. So here you go. So right. So Quinlan's using his mind grapes here. If one had a copy of Escape from Dagu, one might have it in the uncorrected proof form, right? So something to think about. Hey, thanks, Steve. Good to talk to you again. Have a good flight. Yeah, that's a hot take. Yep. Certainly the most crowded. it's tricky because, and I always think of something Matt said about the Clone Wars, which is like ultimately, who cares about the Clone Wars contradictions in the sense that we know how they end, right? And we know the rebellion's successful. And it's, yeah, I mean, I'm probably in the camp that says like the post Jedi era is the most interesting because that's really where um, none of us knew where anything was going, right? Even with the later Old Republic stuff, which is great. It's like, you know where that ends, right? You ultimately, I mean, even though there's gaps and stuff there too, don't get me wrong. It's like, you know, we want to know what happens after the films, right? So, um, oh, yeah, I've got to make that. Yeah, one of these days. Hey, what's up? Hey, that's awesome. Cool. That's good to know. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that anyone gets inspired about those. I mean, I don't know that I've ever like put the list out there, but that's something that we ought to put up. There's a project in the works to sort of like digitize all of them and make them available for anyone. In particular, make translations available of the ones that are not in English. I mean, there's quite a few in Spanish and French and Swedish and I mean the list goes on and on. But yeah, that's great. There, a lot of them are still relatively easy to find. There are some that are virtually impossible. There are a couple that are near mythical, there's like Morning Star Rising, Maelstrom. They're like these really short runs of uh, of mags are just nearly impossible to find. Um, Game Trade Magazine, just weird. So like, yeah, it's tough, but it's fun. It's fun. I've pretty much given up on Star Wars. That's sad. I mean, but I understand that apathy is eating into enjoyment of the EU. I've been there. I've taken my breaks. You know what I mean? There's no question. And I got to say, I haven't commented on this on YouTube, but a couple weeks back, like the Star Wars Celebration announcements about these new movies set in the new canon that are just like once again utterly sort of like ripping into, you know, just lifting like the EU, right down to the conspicuous dates about when like the Dawn of the Jedi would be set in the new canon, right around when it's set in the EU, even though we supposedly learn in the new canon that like the Republic isn't that old and stuff like that. It's really tough. It's tough to make it through stuff like that, and I can really appreciate how just, you know, given the state of Star Wars and everything like that, it can sort of lead to some apathy about our love of the EU. I totally get it, and I've been there, and I'm sure I'll be there again at some point. I really sort of wax and wane. In a way, the promos is what sort of like kind of kept me kind of engaged. You know what I mean? It's and the collector side of me has kind of kept me going, right? But sometimes you start to wonder, like, God, why am I collecting this? You know what I mean? It just feels like it's, you know, it's like the current IP holders have gone out of their way to make it just feel like it's just this dead relic and stuff like that, right? So what am I doing? Like almost morbidly trying to memorialize it. I get it. I get it. It's really tough, but you know, sometimes you take those breaks, you come back and you realize just, you know, how good it was, right? And hopefully how good it can be. And I have to say, for anyone out there, you know, with doubts about supernatural encounters, which is realistically probably going to be one of the last things we get, one of the last sort of official pre-2014 commission works that we're going to finally sort of see. Again, I've only read the first part, but I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So who knows? Maybe the best of the EU is yet to come. Any comic artists? I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, I'm trying to think of like non-Star Wars comic artists who had like would have like a good Star Wars style. I don't really know. Um, there's definitely some good modern comic artists out there that are doing some great. I mean, who is it that does work with? There's a guy that does work with Jeff Johns now, who's phenomenal, like unfathomably good at drawing superheroes. It would be interesting to get his take on some Star Wars stuff. In terms of like one author I wish could get a chance to write for the EU. Oh God, I think I've answered this before, and it's kind of a lame answer, but I think back on some canceled projects. So again, when I think of like Margaret Weiss, who was one of the co-founders of Dragonlance, sort of like Dungeons and Dragons tie-in, I think when you think about the fact that there was in theory a world where Kenneth Flint and Margaret Weiss and a couple of other people sort of drawn from the fantasy side of SFF, right? Like they were going to be dominating like the early Star Wars timeline, the Bantam era. I think it'd be really interesting to see what Star Wars have gone in a completely different direction. So I think Margaret Weiss might be my answer. I love Dragonlance, and I'd be interested to sort of see what she would have done with her proposed but canceled sequel to Heart of the Jedi, a book called Legacy of Doom. Unfortunately, we know from her that it's just gone for good. No, I'm pretty sure they're the Japanese. Hey, what's up, man? Good to see you. Yeah, no, I know these manga ones that we're talking about. I don't get too caught up in this, but I think they're designated like end canon, even if they fit within the continuity, right? So, but I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, there's great stories in them. Let's see here. All of them. That's great. These are what these are. These little mini books I talk about, these German fan club books, the Heinz minis. If you don't know what we're talking about, look them up. They're really interesting. Do I like the direction E was headed in pre-decanonization toward TCW legacy era? God, good question. If you're just citing those three, not particularly. I don't think Legacy 2 was what Legacy 1 was. I think that TCW. See, you know what's interesting? I'll revise my answer. I'm one of the only EU fans who kind of likes the last weird lost season of TCW that was on Netflix because it was so bizarre and weird. I don't know. And I think sets up, we've heard these rumors about what George might have wanted episodes 7, 8, and 9 to be about, where he'd actually have maintained control of Lucasfilm. And based on what we've heard, and I don't know if it's like made up, but like it would have been about like, I mean, I read this one article, it would have been about like exploring the inner world of the midichlorians, right? Like explaining like the nature of the Force. And you can see the hints of that just like weird, wacky shit in that last Lost Mission series on Netflix and TCW. I thought that was fascinating. It was really out there, right? So I don't know. Some of that I kind of weirdly liked, but TCW I thought was a mistake ultimately, right? Legacy 2 was not what Legacy 1 was. The Dark Horse comics were starting to sort of slip in sort of overall quality. The Del Rey books were starting to sort of increasingly sort of particularly that maybe the last 2 years, with a couple of notable exceptions like Plagueis and Kenobi and things like that, we're starting to tell stories that weren't very connected with much else, almost as if they kind of saw the writing on the wall and wanted to write books that could intentionally sort of be part of either sort of canon, either the existing continuity or whatever it was this newly formed story group was going to do. And I don't like that. I don't like the fact that there's these major investments you have to make in Star Wars EU storytelling, and in the form of reading like Razor's Edge and things like that, that don't really pay off in any way, right? That don't have any major interconnections with other stuff. That just so there, all of a sudden towards the end, it just felt like the cohesiveness was like just a little off or whatever. Swartzwar didn't really play the game at the time, but I'd have no complaints. So kind of a mixed bag, right? Kind of a mixed bag, unfortunately. I liked where they were going to go, though. I liked what they were proposing. I would have liked to learn more about whatever connections they were going to make between Crucible and the Legacy era. Would have wanted to read Sword of the Jedi. Even if at this point, interestingly, and I've said this for years, even if at this point I've stopped asking for that, I've stopped caring. I don't want to give them the satisfaction anymore, right? But anyway, but so it's mixed bag. Hey, what's up, man? Hey, what's up, Scott? This is great. Yeah. Um, Gary Frank, that's who it is. Really like Gary Frank. Really like Gary Frank. Um, it is top tier. It is top tier EU, at least what I've read. No complaints. Really, really liked it. You know what, Slav, you're right too. Okay, there's two. So there's Frank and there's Fabok, and I think Frank was the one. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Frank was the one who, for instance, did some work with Jeff Johns on like Justice League Run and some things like that, which I really loved in like the New 52. And I think it's Fabok who did the Three Jokers. Maybe I have that backwards. The Three Jokers, which came out what, maybe 2020, I forget, 2021. Unfathomably good artwork, insane, in an era in which comic art is just, practically on the verge of being AI and lifeless and undetailed. I mean, this guy is just insane. Love it. Makes you actually want to read comics. Not much really can do that these days. Yeah, the late TCW stuff, even if it was Georgian Cowboy, overriding the whole concept of Sith spirits. I mean, look, that's the thing. I mean, look, it's a story as old as the EU itself. The Clone Wars are a gigantic mess, and everything about everything toward. I mean, it's everything about the way they ended such an essential part. Even our like decades long understanding of what the nature of like what balance in the force even meant, TCW screws up, whatever. I mean, so let me clarify, and I've clarified this in multiple videos, so I don't want this to undo the record. I think that when I first saw the Filoni Clone Wars in 2008, I thought there was a problem, as did many, because it didn't even appear to be in order. It didn't appear to have big stakes. It was confusing. We ultimately found out through like reference works published subsequently that, of course, as we all now know now, like the first season isn't even in chronological order with itself, right? I was such and am such a tremendous fan of the Tartakovsky Clone Wars and believed the hype, and make no mistake, the hype was not made up. We were told that the Filoni Clone Wars was going to be in some sense a stylistic sort of follow-up, right? I was actually super, super, super hyped for the Clone Wars. A while back, I even showed off I have like the original promo teaser poster that we got at Star Wars Celebration, whatever year that would have been, 2000, whenever it's 7 or something like that. Super excited, still have it. Super excited. Saw it and said, "This is not the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, right?" A lot of stuff didn't make sense. Wasn't that great in my opinion, but so I kind of stepped away from it for a while. But I've said in many videos, I recognized at the time when I would go to celebrations and things like that after 2008, I could see the impact it was having on kids and stuff like that. You might look back and be like, the pernicious impact it was having, right? But no, like, I mean, I could tell that like it was a way that people were connecting with Star Wars, and I thought that was cool. I thought that was neat, right? Admittedly, a little bit towards the end of the show, though, like even though some of the episodes start getting more sophisticated, some of the enjoyment as a viewer gets better, even as it gets kind of wackier in some places. There are other places that are like inexcusable in terms of what it does to sort of just punt kick sort of elements of not just the basic continuity, but again, like major understandings about the nature of the force itself, right? And what balance means, stuff like that, the prophecy and everything like that. So whatever, right? So the Clone Wars is it's a mixed bag. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I think that the things it did to lore were avoidable. I guess that's my biggest thing. But ultimately, I'm not one of these people who thinks that therefore it's not a part of the expanded universe or anything like that, right? I take the challenge seriously that it is, and that one of the reasons why the decanonization sucks is that it denied us the opportunity to get the promised retcons. Why is that important? Because even Lucasfilm recognized that it was a total fucking mess, right? And they kept promising us as early as 2008 that they were going to make sense of it, right? And the decanonization let them off the hook. So yeah. So, but I try not to be a TCW hater. I'm just a realist. There's my experience. I wanted to love it. I didn't. I can still sit back and enjoy some episodes. Again, I'm probably the only EU fan who likes that last season on Netflix, But hey, that's just my honest take. But we can only speculate, right? We can only speculate. And I don't know. I really, really don't know. It's a really good question. I really don't know. I've heard this rumor. You know what I really, really wish? I really wish that someday we'd get the official take on what he thought he wanted to do with it, right? I mean, I've heard because even the stuff that I've supposedly read about, like his thoughts, right? I don't know where they're coming from. Maybe they're made up. But I swear I read somewhere once that he had this idea for like maybe Darth Talon or like a Darth Talon like character to be involved and stuff like that. So, he was clearly paying attention. I think he would have pulled from here and there. But I think like the prequels, I think there would have been lots of things that wouldn't have meshed very well with the EU. But that's okay because it would have been Lucasfilm's and the EU's job to make the EU make sense of it. And that would have been interesting. That would have been an exciting new narrative challenge for the EU to grapple with. That I think would have actually interestingly sparked a lot of life in Expanded Universe as a reader, I think that some of them are lame and some are cool. I have them all. I mean, but yeah, some are just lame, but both the artwork and the stories. And yeah, some of it's torture, but some of them are good. Some of them are important. That I mentioned one earlier, the Nathan Butler one is really good. Yeah, I know, few and far between, but I am always glad to hear that people who are still definitely engaged in the expansion still seem to be engaged. That's good. The New 52 was almost as bad as decanonization for me. 1986, that was a great period of DC Comics. It was a great, great period. That's true. I thought that there were a couple of things about the New 52 I liked. We're getting into some non-Star Wars territory here, but I do think there were a couple things about the New 52 I liked. I liked the Justice League run. I really did. I thought there was some. I thought the first sort of year of a lot of New 52 titles. For anyone who doesn't know, the New 52 was a gigantic company-wide reboot of the DC Comics continuity. After many years of sort of like official, sort of like, narratively driven retcons and reboots and stuff like that. It was, even though technically Flashpoint sort of leads to the New 52, it's basically just a hard reboot, right? But in any event, I thought the first year of a lot of titles were good. Wonder Woman, Aquaman. I think Jeff Johns at Aquaman, that was good. But I thought his Justice League run was good, and I thought the last year or so of that was really, really strong. So my greatest complaint is that they didn't do enough with that they kept rebooting. I was so mad that they rebooted again. I invested in the New 52. I didn't walk away when they started it, right? I invested in it. But I've been reading comics since about 1984 or so. And I've been following Marvel and DC. Was kind of more of a Marvel guy for a long time, but had my DC favorites and stuff. But in the modern era, was much more into DC. But I invested. I said, I know I'm gonna go with the New 52. And when they rebooted, I got so mad that they didn't stick with it, right? That I really regret not going more fully in on Rebirth, which then they rebooted a couple years later, because I thought Rebirth was fantastic. So too bad. And now I've taken a really long break from comics because there's just not much out there that interests me really, at least in the two main companies. Yep. Thank you. Have a good night. Y'all probably have to jump off pretty soon too. Yeah, I like the Batman stuff too. I mean, I thought that was good. That's a good example. Meanwhile, I thought the Rebirth, which is what I really want to hype, the Rebirth Superman was phenomenal because it actually returned Superman to the original sort of pre-New 52 continuity, right? And then they ended that again when they rebooted that, but that was really, really strong for a couple of years. So yeah, do you think it should have been its own continuity to understand independent? Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you saying that because again, I'm trying to be balanced here about it, right? The interesting thing is we know for a fact. I mean, this has come out in the intervening years, but in 2008 there was a plan they were about to execute to officially separate the Clone Wars and the movies from the mainline EU continuity. Interestingly, though, I think they would have continued the EU along a parallel path, right? So when we talk about now, this many years later, 9 years after the reboot, about the idea of there being in principle two continuities that can continue in parallel, right? That, in other words, the problem with what happened in 2014 is not the decanonization per se, but the discontinuation of the old continuity, right? What ought to happen is that the new canon can do its stuff, but the EU needs to continue in at least several respects. Close the gaps, publish the canceled stuff, and then tell brand new stories, right? Where do we get this idea in the first place? Well, partially the nature of the reboot, right? The wholesale blank slate reboot, the wholesale rebranding of this thing pre-2014 called Legends means now that it's distinct, right? And it can go off in a different direction. But it's also because it's an idea that comes from Lucasfilm, right, in 2008, when they were grappling with, I think, not probably only the Clone Wars, but also what they probably anticipated coming down the pike with the proposed like Underworld live action TV show that Lucas was doing, in addition to The Force Unleashed, which came out, I think, in 2008 as well, which Lucas was involved in, right? Which stretched elements of continuity to the near breaking point. I think that there was a realistic sort of view inside Lucasfilm that to do something to maintain the cohesion of the EU, right? But to continue its growth and to continue the cohesion of this new sort of like television game, sort of Lucas focus, sort of let's split them into two. That was going to happen, but didn't, right? And although I think that the 2014 reboot happened for slightly different reasons, a large number of which like just simply relate to the structure of J.J. Abrams' movie production deal. I think that they kind of had their own template to use as well, right? Where they're like, yeah, let's do what we sort of talked about before, except in this case, we're going to discontinue the EU rather than sort of continue it along a parallel path. I think largely for reasons that were that relate to, again, the J.J. Abrams production deal. I've talked about that in other videos. I can talk about that again at some point in another video in the future. I hit 500. That's fantastic. I don't know if that's changed since this comment got dropped, but that's great. Wow. Okay. I did it. After however many years it took, I finally did it. 501, here we come. Maybe some time in the year 25 million. That's fantastic. Well, thank you to all 500 who have subscribed. I appreciate it. Yeah, the Backstab is a French RPG mag. There's however many number, I forget exactly. It's like maybe like less than 12 or something that you need that have Star Wars content. They're still available. You can definitely find those both on like North American platforms. But again, for folks who don't know, ebay.fr, right? It's the French eBay. There's tons and tons and tons of French RPG mags with Star Wars content. Casus Belli and Descartes. They upload that. Oh, there's so many. I got to just publicize the full list. It's a total joke. The continuity of all these things is a total joke compared to the EU. And you know, the other here's the joke about Star Wars right now. Before 2014, Star Wars was unique in being really the only IP that had this level of interconnectivity and continuity, right? Unprecedented. And now, ironically, post 2014, it's the only IP that doesn't have a multiverse or parallel continuities, right? What's going on? Well, I don't understand. What did we do? What did we do to earn this disrespect? Right. So, um, yeah, it's interesting to get perspectives on people different ages and stuff, right? I mean, so someone growing up watching TCW, experienced some of it as a kid. Southern Micro Series was airing, just ended up, yeah. I was pretty old when the Micro Series started, and was way too old, for instance, when the Filoni stuff started to kind of just be pulled in just on like the sheer cartoon level, right? So I can appreciate that there are people of like a younger generation who, for whom that just means something different, right? In the way that like Ewoks meant something to people in the previous generation or whatever, right? That you kind of have to be that person to understand. So we hear almost next to nothing about Leland Chee's contributions to keeping the EU chronological, partially because he didn't do that great of a job all the time. But he is in some ways an unsung hero, and in other ways, I think an unfortunate I don't know, character in all of this drama. I feel like I think that I think his legacy is very complicated. I think his role, by the way, in actually organizing the holocron and helping to sort of like implicitly establish a new way in which to track canon and continuity in the early 2000s is just so important, right? I mean, I think the work he did in creating the holocron, which allowed every element of the EU to be sort of designated some level of canon, is what ultimately allows the EU to potentially be radically flexible, right? Like anti-fragile in the long run, right? To sort of meet any sort of narrative challenge. Unfortunately, I think to the extent we believe that he was in some sense kind of this continuity cop, he didn't always, it seems, sort of like lay down the law, and that's unfortunate, right? So what are you going to do? But I think particularly with the Clone Wars, and I think that one reason why I always slightly cringe when people now, this many years, sort of engage in a ever so slight revisionism about just how involved George Lucas was with the Clone Wars. I think that Chi himself believed that in some sense the Clone Wars was effectively off limit because in his view, to say no to Filoni would be to say no to George. And no one says no to George, right? The problem was there were occasions when Chi wouldn't say no to like Zahn or an author or something who clearly wasn't George, whatever, right? And it's ironic that occasionally we as EU fans will say the EU is great precisely because from time to time there'll be a short story, say an Insider, that provides this really clever retcon to make it all fit, when in fact those little retcons were necessary only because Chi didn't want to say no over here, so we asked someone to do that over there, right? You know what I mean? But whatever, right? So hey, he got the job done. He built the holocron. That's important. Does the holocron still exist? I will show it to you right now. No, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. The reason I'm pausing is because, unfortunately, like, he's disappeared from social media, probably for a variety of reasons. But I'm trying to remember if I've got these like vague recollections, like from years ago, 2015, 2016, about him on Twitter sort of referring to the holocron still. And I'm trying to remember why. Like, would it have been in the context of questions about like Fantasy Flight or even things that were continuing to be published post 2014, like Abel Pena's work and stuff like that. I'm just trying to remember if it was something he was still maintaining. So I don't know. That would be really important to find out. Yeah, it's a good plug for the visual dictionaries and stuff. I'm a completist. I think that every one of these nonfiction guides and stuff like that is essential. And as we find out, in many cases, these reference guides actually turn out to have like in-universe stuff too, right? To be presented often in universe perspective. Didn't she say he wouldn't include into the holocron planet still around? Yeah, right. That the quality. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, I swear I've heard him talk about things like that, right? But then again, even if he were to say something like that in particular, I don't know that I really trust. I think, look, I mean, just to be super clear, Lucasfilm employees aren't allowed to respond to questions about lore like this anymore without going through Disney PR. And that's not some conspiracy theory. That's not some fandom menace talking point. That's the new policy, right? So it's like whatever he's going to say now is going to be whatever someone wants him to say, frankly. And it may be one reason why he's off Twitter. I mean, it's like, what's the fun of responding to these questions anymore if that's what he's going to have to say? It may explain one reason why, for instance, for the longest time before he left social media, he started giving these unbelievably unsatisfying answers to questions like, hey, like where does Young Jedi Knights Chapter 6 of Volume 3 sort of fit or whatever? And he'd be like, oh, well, I think Pablo's Essential Reader's Guide says it's here. And it's like, well, why are you asking Pablo? Why are you referring to his book? I could have looked that up. I'm asking you, look in the holocron. You tell me, you know what I mean? So Dylan with the hookup. So it's 2015 he had it. I don't think he deleted it, but I also don't know if he still has it. Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know. I wonder what they use to track the new canon on, right? If it's tracked at all, who knows? Oh, he has an Instagram. I didn't realize that. Yeah, look, I mean, he left Twitter. Twitter's not a great place to be. I can respect him for that, for leaving. Well, too bad. Damn it. See, the EU had it coming, right? So I'm glad it ended. But did I have anything else here I was going to show before? Oh, this is sort of random. So speaking of random magazines, this is just a random smattering. I'm trying to get these all organized. Some of these aren't particularly interesting to look at because they have like the mailing covers, but these are Lego magazines. So this is Lego. This is Lego Club magazine. I think this is from September, October 2009. Why? Because it contains original EU stories. The Hunt for R2 is on. So the Hunt for R2 was the story that took place over the course of like 6 different Lego magazines. This is Lego Brickmaster, more Lego. This is Lego Club magazine, not to be confused with Lego magazine. You can see here Lego Club magazine again. The Hunt R2 continues. So there are a ton of Lego magazine situated stories and a couple of tiny little kids books that contain quasi-canonical EU stories. So again, when you think, you're like, yeah, like I read all the adult novels and I guess I'm done. The EU's over. Why are you guys concerned about continuing it? It's all been said. I've read it all, whatever, right? Do you have Brickmaster, right? Do you have Brickmaster magazine? Do you have volume 3 of the Hunt for R2, right? So these Lego magazines are fun and they're another thing to hunt down. Not super difficult to find in my experience. So again, another neat thing that's out there. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I had here I wanted to show off. Let's see here. I don't know, but many more promo items to come, many more obscure bits of Star Wars Expanded Universe to come. We've got all the RPG mags, we've got the comics, we've got the variants, we've got deluxe editions, we've got advanced readers copies, we've got Escape from Dagu, Mandorla, other obscure things. And then when Supernatural Encounters comes out, we'll have to talk a lot about that. So trying to see if there's anything I missed here. Yeah. Interestingly, Pablo has talked about how he initially put together a series of notes about the comics too, because, for anyone who's read The Reader's Companion, he'll occasionally sort of like refer to non-book stories just to sort of add some additional context about the continuity. He supposedly somewhere has like 1,000-page of notes or something like that about what would in effect be a comics companion as well. There is an official comics companion by Dark Horse, a strangely sort of neglected comics companion that they put out. It's woefully out of date, but still interesting. But theoretically, Pablo somewhere has the notes for that. I think it would be amazing to release. Why not put something like that on StarWars.com, right? Just make that available for all of us, right? Yeah, that's great. Me too. It's going to be fun. Escape from Dagu. You knew it. You knew it. So yeah, shoot. Did I have anything else here just readily at hand before we sign off? Oh, yeah, completely non-related to Star Wars, but again, I'm a completist when it comes to everything. Don't discount my love of She-Ra, Princess of Power. Okay, so these are some of the golden books. Let's see. So I've got, you got to have the annuals. You got to have the various sets of the golden books. This is just part of them. This is so great. Catra and Frosta. You got to have the Ladybug books. Now, Ladybug's important because Ladybug's a UK licensee, UK publisher, a licensee of Star Wars stuff too. So Ladybug has done a lot, particularly in the Clone Wars era, a lot of Clone Wars tie-in stuff. So these are some classics. Let's see here, like oh my god, like if you guys haven't seen She-Ra before, man, you are missing out. She-Ra is a fantastic show. For anyone who doesn't know, She-Ra is He-Man's twin sister, and I think She-Ra is the superior show. Amazing continuity and amazing program. But and the first introduction is in this. This is an adaptation of the movie event that in which the two met. He-Man and She-Ra, and discovered that they were related. I think it's a great show. I think it's a great movie. And you got to have the mini worlds, including this. This is maybe the rarest of them all, Threat to Crystal Castle. This is like the Escape from Dagu for She-Ra collectors. So yeah, I take collectism seriously. You know, I'm a completist, but to my to the detriment of storage space in my house. But have I missed anything else here? The weirdest thing too is, like, I just have to say on Dagu, what's weird about it is the speculation about why it was canceled. The official story, right, is that once Del Rey got this sort of like signal that, oh no, it was okay to tell a Yoda story, that later were like, oh my gosh, like let's rush one into publication. And keep in mind, the licensees, at least at the time, I mean, like they get a certain number of slots. And so they have to choose those wisely. They can't just like publish that alongside a new Yoda story. It's kind of like the structure of the licensing deal is X number of books in this format, blah, 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 with this level of promotion, et cetera, et cetera. So they choose the Yoda over Dagu. That's the official story. But going all the way back to the time it was canceled, there were forum debates about why this happened. Now, take it with a grain of salt. But like Pablo and stuff like that were basically like, oh, well, he was kind of like, hey, kind of joking, like, hey, well, why was it canceled? Hey, well, like, would you really be sad if, like, fill in the blank X bad EU book was canceled too? So there's sort of this weird conspiracy theory that's persisted ever since it was canceled, that ultimately it just wasn't that good of a book. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Bill Ditz wrote other things for Star Wars, and not everyone's a huge fan, for instance, like of his why can't I think of it? Like the Dark Forces sort of adaptation, whatever. But I don't believe that. But again, it's so interesting. There's this kind of like hidden backstory sort of constantly circulating on forums to this day about why was it canceled, right? And it's interesting how if we only get to the bottom of that, I'll be satisfied. In the same way that it took until last year for the true story about why Lightsider was effectively sort of pulled from production, right, to really come to light. That was fascinating. So just that forensic work alone, I think, was worth the sort of the research. Yeah. Yeah. What'd you got? D's nuts. You set me up, man. Nice. Okay. Anyway, guys, everyone, thanks for joining. Thanks for the subscriptions. 500, fantastic. Thank you so much. And oh, you know what? This is a good one to end on. Even if it's bad, I still want Dagu. I completely agree with that. So Yeah. Yeah, wait a minute, right? How did this happen then, right? That's the greatest mystery of all. But more promos to come, more obscure Star Wars expanded universe to come, more RPGs with unique Star Wars EU content to come, more collecting nonsense to come, more insights into how to track down Australian promo posters of video games from the 1980s that relate to Star Wars and stuff like that. So anyway, thanks for sticking around. I will see you guys later. Adios.